Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I just finished, and I mean like just finished a couple hours before recording this, and I just knew that I had to talk about it. Yes, obviously I liked it a lot, probably a lot more than a lot, and the book is Lovely War by Julie Berry. I do not have the physical book with me. I actually listened to the audiobook. So just in case you're wondering or on the fence about that, obviously I believe, especially as a librarian, that all reading is reading, whether it is audiobooks, ebooks, or physical books. I'm not here to judge how you read the book, and I gotta tell you, it took me years to be an audiobook listener. Well, I didn't mind so much when I was like very young. My family listened to some audiobooks together, but then, I don't know, I mostly read all of my books, like they were all physical books. But then a few years ago, because it was better for like my work schedule and whatever, I started listening to audiobooks, and I discovered that I really loved them. There are times where I don't, if it has kind of an iffy narrator, I am not so into it, but the majority of the time there's some great actors and narrators who are narrating the audiobooks, and I love them. And I pay just as close attention to an audiobook as I do to a physical book, which means if the book is boring me, even if it's a physical book, I skim it. And I think you'll come up with the same things if you are an audiobook listener. If you're just not enjoying the book, you may miss sections of the book, but I think people do that when they read as well. So I'm not here to judge how you enjoy your books. I like all of the ways. I like just consuming the media. So we'll get that out of the way, and let me talk about this book because I loved it. Also, just as a side note to what I was saying, this book had an excellent audiobook. There were different characters that were voiced by different actors, narrators. So it's really great. You get to know like which character is which or who is telling that part of the story based on who's narrating. So yeah, so good. So let me get into what it is about. So when the book opens, and I love this, I especially love this, it opens on some Greek gods, and it's actually that Aphrodite has been having another tryst with Ares. So Aphrodite is the god of love, and Ares, of course, is the god of war. And they've been known to have these trysts. Aphrodite is married to Hephaestus, who is the god of fire, metalworking, building stuff. That's Hephaestus. But she often gets around with other mortals and gods. So she is once again having a relationship with Ares. Hephaestus has caught them in a trap, which if you know Greek mythology at all, that actually did happen, where he trapped them in bed once and had everybody like judge them and laugh at them. They have a weird relationship. But anyway, they're caught this time, and the big question posed to them is, why are love and war so attracted to each other? And they're kind of put on this trial, and Aphrodite decides to answer, and her defense and her answer is actually the main narrative of the book. So she tells this story that occurred during World War I, which I love this. So then we get the whole historical fiction narrative that occurs during World War I. And I love that it's set during World War I, because if you like to read historical fiction like I do, you'll know that there is a lot of it that is set in World War II. There are especially a lot that are like women during World War II. And not that that's a problem, it's great, but sometimes you get kind of exhausted reading the same stories about women during World War II. So this has a little bit of refreshment in the fact that it is set during World War I. And so Aphrodite begins to tell the tale, and she's telling the story about two young people who meet. One is Hazel, who plays the piano, and she's just kind of a young, dreamy girl, and she meets James, who wants to be an architect, but as the times are the times, he is actually heading off to the war to be a soldier. So they meet and they have a really instant and great connection with the help of Aphrodite, of course, as she tells them the story. They feel destined to have met. They are kind of over the moon for each other, and they decide to try to write and stay in touch while he goes off to war. And so you follow their story while James is suffering through the war. Hazel begins to do service as well, but through the YMCA, and she meets the other main story, because really there's 4 major characters and their intertwining stories. So she ends up meeting Colette, and Colette was from Belgium originally, and her whole family, that lived there, including the man that she loved, were all murdered by the Germans during one of the attacks of the war. And so she is dealing with all of her emotional baggage from then, but the two hit it off as friends. So Hazel and Colette just, they do their service during the war, but they also happen to meet a young man named Aubrey, and Aubrey is also serving in the war. He is a very talented musician who's actually played Carnegie Hall, and he is currently serving with the 15th New York Regiment, which is the all-African-American regiment during World War I, and he quickly falls in love with Colette. But the two of them have to face hardships over the fact that she is white and he is black, and so the rest of the world does not want to see them in a relationship together. And so James especially is dealing with a lot of prejudice and racism within the military. There's other troops that are serving that are from America that keep telling him to stay away from the white women and trying to tell the women to stay away from these black soldiers and that they shouldn't interact. And so you get that historical piece because this is stuff that actually did occur. You get that nice historical background about this stuff that was happening then. Apparently I live on the loudest street in the world. So I apologize if you hear a lot of background noises in my video. For some reason, it's very loud. I don't know why the cars are so loud. So the two of them have to try to find a way to work on their relationship and decide whether or not they can be in a relationship with one another, with the difficulties of the outside world judging them and trying to force them to be certain ways. I don't want to give too much away because I really like this book. So one of the things that I love is, even though a lot of it is Aphrodite's the main narrator, she also brings in other gods to, act as the defense. So she'll bring in Apollo, and Apollo tells his section of the tale. I think Apollo is who introduces Aubrey because Aubrey is a musician. So he'll tell a lot of Aubrey's tale. And of course, when it gets to scenes that deal with the war and what happened during the war, then Ares gets to tell that part of the tale. And I don't know, I love the way that was structured. If you like classical mythology and you kind of want to see those characters in a semi-new light, this is a great book for that, because even though I think honestly, just the main narrative of the story, it could have been written out as a basic historical fiction romance, and you would get introduced to these characters and the events would just play out. But the fact that layered on top of this historical romance is the narrative of the gods just heightens it for me anyway. It just brings it up to a higher level, and I love it so much. And I loved too that even in this dynamic of the gods where, yes, Aphrodite was once again caught with Ares, that you get to see this dichotomy between Hephaestus and Ares, but in a different way from normal, because usually Ares is kind of like, why is Aphrodite with this guy? In case you don't know, like, Hephaestus was lame, and he wasn't lame as in his leg didn't work very well, so he walked with a cane. And he was also often said to be deformed. So it was, why is this guy with Aphrodite, who's so beautiful? And they had kind of mixed feelings in their relationship, like they were almost forced to be together because everybody was trying to get with Aphrodite, so Zeus kind of forced them to be married. And what you kind of see built in the background, you know, you'll have Ares who's sitting there while Aphrodite's trying to talk. He just wants her to get on with it, and like, this is a boring story to him, and you know, oh, all this love stuff, you know, he wants to get on to like the war portion. But then you see Hephaestus, and Hephaestus is kind of like in awe of Aphrodite, and he's really like enraptured by her storytelling and her tale. So he wants her to continue talking, and he wants to keep listening to her, while Ares is like, all right, shut up already, and let's get to like the fighting scenes. And I just found that so interesting, because, you know, usually it is, well, why wasn't she with like the handsome and brave Ares? And it was like, well, he's kind of a jerk. I mean, they keep doing things together, but he's also kind of a jerk. And you do also get to see the character of Hades, because of course this is a wartime, so people are lost during it, so you do get like Hades' witness account too. And I just felt like the whole thing was fascinating, and I don't know, I think I was probably more enamored by like including the Greek gods, but the actual historical fiction narrative is really sweet too. I mean, I would almost dare you or bet you to read this book and not fall in love with the main four characters, because I don't think you could. They're just such good people, and their stories are engaging, and you just kind of want to root for them and hope for the best, and you'll read it on the edge of your seat, because it is during a terrible, terrible wartime. You know, the Great War, it really set up modern warfare, and it was just awful. Like the development that we did for war, you could say, yeah, that was amazing, but at the same time, it was awful. It was awful. The different gases that we attacked people with, the developments of the tanks, like, has it made the world better? I don't know. I don't know if it made the world any better. There is a great author's note at the end of the book that goes over parts that are true, like there are certain characters that actually existed, and there are events that actually existed that the author goes over, and so you really see the passion and the research that was put into this book too, and I think it really shows. This book, it was so good. Like, I almost hate to have like such a glowing review of it, but it was so good. There are many people who report crying over this book. I didn't cry, but I definitely felt emotional over it. There were times where I like felt my heart stop over what was happening, and I was so nervous about what was going to happen next. Yeah, I mean, this is a war, so there's a lot of serious issues going on. So you may have your heart broken a couple times. Just prepare for that if you read it, and I do think that you should read it. It is so good. Look for it. So give this one a read. I don't think that you will regret it. Again, this is great for historical fiction lovers. Which is what I like. It's great if you like classical mythology. It's great if you like romance, because it's also a lovely romantic narrative. So that's it for this video, but I will be back with more book recommendations. Until next time, bye!